Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Good evening and welcome to the Reaver of Common Sense. I'm Jersey Joe and I'm making sense out of the senseless right here on SHR Media, Conservative Media done right. Tonight's show is one of those nights where the headlines show just how interconnected the world has become. In the last 24 hours, we've seen terror attacks here on American soil, major military development in the Persian Gulf, and political battles in Washington that will shape everything from energy prices to election integrity. The front line of today's conflict isn't limited to a distant battlefield anymore. It stretches from overseas shipping lanes all the way into American communities and institutions. We'll begin with the disturbing attacks in Michigan and Virginia, breaking down what happened at a synagogue in West Bloomfield and a deadly shooting at Old Dominion University. From there, we turn to the heavy price paid by the men and women serving this country, honoring the 4 American service members lost during the high-risk missions connected to Operation Epic Fury. But those stories are only part of the picture tonight. We're also looking at the U.S. Navy's major move against Iranian mine-laying ships in the Persian Gulf and what that means for global energy security. At the same time, here at home, we'll examine a security incident near the White House, the controversial home check gun proposal in Minnesota, and the continuing debate over border policy as new reports estimate the illegal migration population approaching 19 million illegals. Let me say that again. A new report estimates the illegal migrant population approaching 19 million. We'll also break down the political fight unfolding in Washington, including the push for the Save American Act, the legal collapse surrounding Fannie Willis's RICO case, and the economical fallout from aggressive wealth tax policies that are driving major business leaders out of blue states, from energy markets and foreign policies to media narratives and constitutional right. Tonight, we're connected the dots across the stories, shaping the national conversation. So buckle up, because tonight, we're connecting the dots between foreign policy, domestic security, and the Washington power structure that is desperately trying to maintain its grip while common sense takes the wheel. If you want to support the show directly, you can become a YouTube member by hitting the join button below the stream, or you can drop a super chat during the live broadcast. Your support helps keep the lights on here at SHR Media and keeps this microphone live. And don't forget to check out SHR Media merch store at shrmedia.com, because sometimes the best way to spread common sense is to wear it. All right, let's get into this. Now, there is a story that popped up just prior to coming on air. I don't have a lot on it. I'll give you what I have. And it is a tweet from President Trump. Moments ago, at my direction, the United States Central Com executed. Holy shit, it's starting early. Executed one of the most powerful bombing raids in the history of the Middle East, and totally obliterated every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Crag Island. Now, I could be mispronouncing the name. If I did, please forgive me. Check something real quick. And also, before we go any further, I want to shout out to all the moderators that are here tonight. I want to thank every single one of them. I want to thank anybody and everybody that's in the chat, anybody that's listening or watching the show. I appreciate every single one of you, whether you like me or not. I still appreciate you. Back to the post by the president. Our weapons are the most powerful and sophisticated that the world has ever known. But for reasons of decency, I have chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Straits of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision. During my first term and currently, I rebuilt our military into the most lethal powerful and effective force by far anywhere in the world. Iran has no ability to defend anything that we want to attack. There is nothing they can do about it. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, nor will it have the ability to threaten the United States of America, the Middle East, or for that matter, the world. Iran's military and all others involved with this terrorist regime would be wise to lay down their arms and save what's left of their country, which isn't much. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Well, Iran's going to learn the hard way, looks like. Now, I don't believe the reports. I don't want to say reports. Some of the posting that I've seen on X, the rumors are still going around that the new supreme leader is dead. We don't know. There hasn't been any confirmation. Iran, the only thing they've done is say, look, we have proof. He's posted on X. He's released this press release. Anybody can release those press releases or those X posts. Nobody has seen this man, heard from this man within the international world. We know he was injured in the initial attack that killed his father. Whether he is conscious and alert, well, you be the judge. You take the guess. Yes, Marco Rubio. I don't normally check on chat. I was checking on something else, and I saw Marco Rubio's Jobs is in the chat, and he said Iran is in the FO stage. Yes, they are. They are very much in the FO stage. Now we'll get on to the segments. Ooh, I got to correct one other thing. I'm setting up new things within the setup of the show. I'm still working on it right before the show started. I missed a few things. But while the headlines are dominated by the operations in the Middle East, the reality of that conflict arrived here at home with two violent incidents in Michigan and West Virginia. The events highlight a difficult truth about modern security. The front line is no longer confined to distant battlefields. It can emerge in ordinary American communities, places of worship, and college campuses. I'm also setting up a video for just a moment. The first took place in West Bloomfield, Michigan. A suspect identified as that 41-year-old Ayman Mohammed Ghazali, butchering his name. I know I am. I really, when it comes to these scumbags, I really couldn't take the time to learn it. Allegedly drove a truck containing explosives into the entrance of a temple, or into the Temple Israel, a large synagogue that also houses a preschool with about 140 children inside during the day. The vehicle pushed into the hallway as the suspect reportedly carried a rifle, creating a situation that could have quickly turned into a mass casualty tragedy. The outcome changed because trained security personnel were already in place. Armed guards engaged the suspect almost immediately and stopped him before he could reach the classroom. Authorities later reported that the suspect died from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. The vehicle later caught fire, producing heavy smoke that sent roughly 30 responders to the hospital for smoke inhalation. That rapid response likely prevented a greater loss of life. And we got a video, I believe it's FBI, talking about...
At approximately 12:20, Ghazali's vehicle gets jammed between hallway walls, and he begins firing through the windshield of his vehicle. Ghazali and the first security officer engage in a gunfight through the rear window of Ghazali's vehicle. And at this point, Ghazali is unable to extract himself due to the vehicle being jammed in the hallway. At approximately 12:22 p.m., a second security officer engages Ghazali in a gunfight from the front of the vehicle. And soon thereafter, Ghazali's vehicle, his engine compartment, catches on fire, and at some point during the gunfight, Ghazali suffers a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. In the bed of the truck, we found large quantities of commercial-grade fireworks and several jugs of flammable liquid we believe to be gasoline, some of which has been consumed in the fire.
At nearly the same time, another attack unfolded at Old Dominion University in Virginia. And according to reports, the suspect, identified as Mohammed Jalaho or whatever, entered a classroom building asking whether it was connected to the ROTC program before opening fire. Retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw was killed in the attack as students attempted to escape and alert authorities. Investigations say Jalal had previously served more than a decade in federal prison after being convicted of attempting to join ISIS. The attack ended when students confronted the suspect and stopped him before additional victims could be harmed. Once again, showing how quickly civilians sometimes become the first line of defense in an unfolding crisis. Authorities are now working to determine whether the two incidents are connected or simply tragic coincidence. Investigators are examining the suspect's background, communication, and potential ideological influences while looking at whether international events may have played a role in motivating the violence. What these incidents ultimately demonstrate is how critical preparedness and rapid response have become in modern America, from trained security at houses of worship to alert students on a college campus. The action of people on the scene helped limit what could have been far deadlier outcome in both Michigan and Virginia. Now, I also read, I believe it's the attacker in Michigan. He was upset because his two brothers were killed in Lebanon. They were Hezbollah terrorists, and they were taken out in an Israel attack. And that's why he attacked the synagogue. Well, your brother were terrorists. They're dead. Fuck them. Before we move on, remember this. The attacks in Michigan and Virginia show how threats overseas can echo right here at home. And the people working to stop those threats often operate far from the headlines. That brings us to the men and women on the front line of this conflict. We're starting the show today with a lot of breaking news. Strikes in the Gulf, terror cells in the homeland, and a shifting global map. But before we get deeper into strategy, we have to talk about the human cost. We have official confirmation that 4 American service members were killed during a high-stake night operation as part of Operation Epic Fury. These were elite individuals operating in the most hostile condition imaginable, working to ensure the threats we just discussed in Michigan and Virginia never have the chance to take root. It's easy to get caught up in the precision of modern warfare and the satisfying headlines of sunken enemy ships, but this loss is a heavy blow. While the mission was a success in terms of neutralizing the target, the price paid by these families was absolute. These weren't just names on a manifest. They were the fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters who stood in the gap so the rest of us could sleep under a blanket of freedom tonight. They represent the very best of the American spirit, the rare willingness to face the darkness so the rest of us don't. When we talk about peace through strength, this is the strength we're talking about. It isn't just about hardware, the missiles, or the carrier groups. It's about the resolve of the warriors who carry out the orders. Their sacrifice in the Persian Gulf is directly linked to the security of our ports, our energy lanes, and our front doors. Every time we see a neutralized threat, we owe a debt to the quiet professionals operating in the shadows of this conflict. The news cycle is going to move fast tonight. It will pivot to political skirmishes and economical updates. But for American families, the world has stopped. We owe it to them to stay informed, to stay engaged, and never let their sacrifice be diminished by the noise. They did their job, and now it's our job to make sure this country remains worth the price they paid. Now we're going to go on to if you thought the Navy was doing all the heavy lifting in the Gulf, think again. We are seeing a fundamental shift in how the United States projects power. Major General Dan Kane just revealed that in the first 13 days of this operation, our Army artillery forces have made history. For the first time ever, the Army used precision strike missiles, specifically the ATACMS, to reach out and touch the enemy from land. And they didn't just hit a building or a bridge. General Kane confirms that the Army artillery actually sunk multiple ships, including an Iranian submarine. Think about the common sense reality of that for a second. We have Army guys sitting on land, firing precision missiles, and sending a submarine to the bottom of the Gulf. This is the first time these weapon systems have ever been used this way in combat. It shows a level of determination, relentless training that should make every adversary on the planet sweat. This isn't just a win for the Army, it's a win for the world. The era of safe havens for enemy vessels is over. If the U.S. Army can sink your sub, you sink my battleship with a missile launched from a truck. You have nowhere left to hide. While the media is busy carrying on about the resolve of the Iranian regime, our guys are proving that American precision is the only resolve that actually matters on the battlefield. How about some love for the U.S. Army and the ATACMS crew? This is some world-class shooting. Drop a hoorah in the chat if you're proud of our artillery forces making history today. But the story in the Gulf doesn't stop with the Army rewriting the rule book from land. At the same time those ATACMS strikes were making history, the U.S. Navy was dealing with another threat in the region, one that could shut down global shipping in a matter of hours. Let's shift from land-based strikes to what's happening on the water. The situation in the Persian Gulf just went from a simmer to a full-blown boil. We're getting reports that U.S. naval forces have engaged and sunk over a dozen Iranian vessels that were actively attempting to seed the world's most critical shipping lanes with mines. This wasn't a warning shot or a diplomatic, sternly worded letter. This was a direct, kinetic removal of a threat that had its hands on the throat of the global economy. When you look at the geography of the Straits of Hormuz, you realize that a few dozen mines can do more damage to the global market than a fleet of tanks. By neutralizing these mine layers, the U.S. is signaling that the days of allowing gray zone harassment in the Gulf are over. We've seen these proxy games played out for years, but the current posture from the White House is making it very clear. If you threaten the freedom of navigation, your assets will end up at the bottom of the sea. This is a massive tactical win, but it also ups the ante. Iran's whole strategy depends on being able to threaten a global economy, a global economic heart attack when they feel cornered. I got distracted by a bright light. My Fitbit went off. And that's when I know I'm going to jump subjects here for a minute and go totally off. I had talked a couple of months ago and I was told everybody how I started working out. and doing yoga. Well, I've been still at it. It's been since January. I started at 335. I am now 316. I have dropped, I think, 4 or 5 inches around my waist. I'm doing things that I haven't been able to do for years, like kneeling down to one knee and standing up without any assistance. I know some people might see that and go, oh, that's stupid. Anybody can do it. No, certain medical issues, injuries can keep that from happening. So if anybody's in that kind of shape and you need the help, I do suggest, and I'm not sponsored by them. It's just what I've been doing and it's worked. DDP yoga. I mean, I've dropped weight. It's not just the yoga and you're stretching. You're making sure the joints are getting mobilized that haven't been working in a while. Stretching that scar tissue and all that, it helps. They work on strengthening the core, the legs, the arms, and you start out with what you can do and work your way up. So it was just something I wanted to throw out there, especially since the Fitbit kind of distracted me there for a second. But what we're talking about with this, the Iranian mine ships, this is a massive tactical win, but it also ups the ante. Iran's whole strategy depends on being able to threaten a global economic heart attack whenever they feel cornered. Taking out their mine-laying fleet in one sweep is a major blow to their leverage. It forces the regime in Tehran to either back down or escalate into a fight they clearly aren't prepared for. We're watching peace through strength play out in real time. And right now, the strength of the U.S. Navy is the only thing keeping the world's energy lanes from becoming a graveyard. You have backdoor channels now being gone through. Russia is trying to negotiate ceasefires. Iran wants ceasefires, but they don't seem to get it through their heads of what they have to give up for that to happen. You know, they're going to have to give up their nuclear dreams, period. There is no other way about it. But you can see cracks happening in the Iranian regime. When you have Russia trying to backdoor peace talks, you know things aren't doing good. And we know they're losing power. It won't be much longer. Another week or two, and there's going to be nothing left to hit. They don't have the capability that much. Lebanon is cracking down on, who is it, the Houthis. Is it Houthi or Hezbollah? One or the other. They're all scumbag pieces of shit anyway. But there is also a broader strategic signal being sent here to every actor operating in that region. For years, Iran has relied on a tactic, fast boats, mines, and proxy harassment to challenge far stronger conventional forces. And one of the things they've always counted on is the U.S. backing down for talks. And that's what they thought they were going to get again. People don't understand. That's not happening. Look what Trump's done. He's removed Maduro and freed Venezuelans. All right, maybe not the perfect regime is in control there, but they know not to fuck with us. And they know they're not going to be able to do the same bullshit they've been doing for decades now. We'll talk about Cuba in just a moment and what's going on there. That's big news that's coming out of Cuba. And we were shutting down the Iranian regime and that whole terror network in the Middle East. By removing these vessels quickly and decisively, the United States is demonstrating that those tactics are no longer a low-risk option. The message is simple. Attempt to quietly choke global shipping will be met with immediate and overwhelming force, just as we talked about when I started the show with the post from the president. We hit their island. That is going to hurt them big time, and I don't think anybody's ever thought about hitting that island before. Roughly a fifth of the world's oil passes through the Straits of Hormuz. Even a temporary disruption there can spike global energy prices, rattle financial markets, and send shockwaves through a supply chain worldwide. Clearing those threats before they can be deployed isn't just a military victory. It's a move designed to stabilize the global economy before panic has a chance to take hold. At the same time, this moment puts every regional player on notice. Allies in the Gulf are watching to see whether the United States will defend the waterways that their economies depend on. Adversaries are watching to see whether escalation works as leverage. What just happened sends a clear signal that the maritime choke points of the world are not up for negotiation, and that any attempt to weaponize will be met with a response that is swift, decisive, and impossible to ignore. And now, while the tensions are rising in the Persian Gulf, something very different is unfolding closer to home. Just 90 miles off the coast of Florida, the geopolitical chessboard is shifting in a way we haven't seen in decades. For the first time in history, the communist regime in Havana has officially cried uncle. Today, Cuban president went on national television to confirm what we suspected. The maximum pressure campaign has worked, and Havana is officially at the negotiating table with the Trump administration. Apply some common sense to the timing. In January, the U.S. captured Maduro in Venezuela and cut off the oil lifeline. Then the administration slapped an oil blockade on Cuba and told Mexico to stop the shipments or face massive tariffs. Now, 3 months later, Cuba has no fuel, no money, and no energy. Their president is calling this a search for dialogue, but let's be real, it's a surrender. Trump hinted at a friendly takeover earlier this week in Dora, and today the regime basically handed him the keys to the conversation. This is a massive foreign policy win that doesn't require a single shot. By putting Secretary of State Marco Rubio in charge, the administration is making it clear the deal won't just be about opening up trade. It's about a total transformation of the island. We're talking about the release of 51 political prisoners today as a goodwill gesture. But the real goal is dismantling of the 67-year communist stronghold. While the Democrats in D.C. are filing war powers resolutions to stop a takeover, the regime in Havana is already admitted they have no choice but to deal. To my friends in Miami and across Florida, is this the moment we've been waiting for? Is a friendly takeover the place for a free Cuba? Or is the regime just buying time? Let me know in the chat. Hit that like button if you think Marco Rubio is the right man to close this deal. All right, before we hit the break, quick reminder. If buttons will work. Quick reminder. If you enjoy what you're doing here on SHR Media and Reverb Common Sense, consider supporting the show. You can join the channel as a YouTube member by hitting that join button below the stream. Members help keep independent media alive and get some extra perks as our community grows. And if you want to jump into the conversation live, super chats are open. Your messages get highlighted on the screen, and it helps keep the show rolling. Don't go anywhere. More Reverb Common Sense coming up right after.
Come listen to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show. Live on select and exclusive Tuesday and Thursday nights. at 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Rumble channel, SHR Media YouTube channel, X, Twitch, Spreaker, and wherever great conservative podcasts are found. BZ, your conservative Sherpa, guides you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Raised as a free-range child with dirt, stains, mud, and freedom, BZ broadcasts from North Idaho, comfortably surrounded by actual normal people. Jump into our plush, sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent chat room on rumble.com. Click on live chat to join. Now, with 37% more umbrage and 19% more bulbosity than previous shows, featuring delicious Liberty additives for the best in late-night conservatarian talk radio. BZ reminds you that with great beard comes great responsibility. No chinchillas were harmed, embarrassed, fat-shamed, or the focus of any sarcasm whatsoever in the making of this ad.
Are you looking for a way to boldly express your faith and love for your country? And check out Seven Armors, the premier apparel company for patriotic men of God, where faith meets freedom in style. Our t-shirts are more than just clothing, they're statements. Bold, stylish, and meaningful. From timeless messages to modern designs, we've got something for every patriotic man of God. Wear your beliefs proudly with Seven Armors gear. Don't miss the chance to wear your faith and freedom on your sleeve. Visit 7armors.com today and join the movement. That's the number 7armors.com.
Hey, where do you go when you want real conversation and topics? That's right, you step to the edge. The Edge of Liberty is your home for talk radio the way it was meant to be. I'll be live every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network, and we're simulcast on KLRN Radio. We're building something different, Aaron. We just want you to be a part of it. I'll see you on the edge.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Reaver of Common Sense. I'm your host, Jersey Joe, here to make sense out of the senseless right here on SHR Media, conservative media done right. Don't forget SHR Media merch is here, and it's built for people who refuse to sit quietly while the nonsense runs wild. From bold logo tees to gear that makes a statement without saying a word, this isn't just merch, it's a signal. You stand for freedom of speech. You stand for accountability. You stand where truth lives. Wear it, share it, live it. Grab your SHR Media merch today and represent common sense wherever you go. Head over to shrmedia.com and check out the store. Before we go any further, hit that like button, smash, subscribe, and share the stream like your freedom depends on it, because it just might. Every click helps us punch through big tech censorship, drown out the media noise, and make sure common sense has a fighting chance. Now, foreign policy may dominate the global headlines, but back here at home, another battle is brewing. This one isn't about missiles or naval fleets. It's about constitutional rights, Second Amendment rights, gun rights, and how far government power should reach inside your own home. A Democrat in Minnesota State House has officially introduced a bill that doesn't just regulate what you own, it regulates where you are safe from the government. This legislation would authorize law enforcement officers to enter a private residence of legal firearm owners for the sole purpose of verifying that semi-automatic weapons are being stored according to specific government checklists. Now, let's apply some common sense to this. For decades, the legal standard has been cleared. Your home is your castle, and the Fourth Amendment is the moat that keeps the state out, unless they have a warrant signed by a judge based on probable cause that a crime has been committed. This bill attempts to drain that moat and suggests that the mere act of exercising your Second Amendment right is, in itself, a waiver of your Fourth Amendment protection. They are trying to turn a constitutional right into a permission slip that the police can audit at any time. As a former first responder, I can tell you exactly how this plays out on the ground. You're asking patrol officers who are already dealing with record high crime rates in some areas, staffing shortages all over the place, to spend their shift knocking on the doors of law-abiding citizens to inspect their closet. This isn't about public safety. It's about harassment. It creates a high-tension friction point between the community and the police that does not need to exist. You're putting police officers in the position of compliance inspectors for the victimless crime of how a piece of metal is sitting in a safe. Look at the precedent this sets. If the government can bypass the warrant requirement to check your gun storage in the name of safety, what's next? Do they come in to check if your cleaning chemicals are under a sink lock? Do they inspect your kitchen to make sure your knives are out of reach? This is the nanny state morphing into a surveillance state. It is a slow, methodical squeeze designed to keep gun ownership so socially and legally invasive that the average person just gives up. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There was a study in the late 80s, early 90s that the Democrats did on how to ban guns. And the study came up with that they can't ban guns outright. The American citizens will not put up with it. What you have to do is make laws, make ordinances and regulations that make it so fucking hard to get and keep guns. All the paperwork, all the steps you have to go through to get a gun. That to the point, now this, do I really want them coming through my house? Do I really want to go through all the paperwork? Never mind. I just won't get a gun. And that's what they're counting on. This bill is a trial balloon. If they can get away with it in Minnesota, they will try to export it to every blue state in the country. It is a fundamental rejection of the idea that American citizen has a right to be left alone by the government. They want you to believe that safety requires the total surrender of privacy. But we know better. Safety comes with a prepared and free citizenry, not from a government that thinks it owns the keys to your house. If you think your front door should stay closed to the government unless they have a warrant, you need to hit that like button and share the stream. We have to shine a light on these compliance traps before they become the national standard. And speaking of government power and national security, something happened today in Washington that immediately raised eyebrows because the security spotlight suddenly shifted to the most protected address in America. At a time U.S. forces are engaged overseas, the security spotlight suddenly shifted right back to the heart of Washington, D.C. A vehicle crashed into the outer barrier near the White House complex, immediately triggering lockdown procedures and a rapid Secret Service response. Any breach at the executive mansion is treated with the highest level of urgency, especially during a period of international tensions. Incidents like this instantly raise questions about intent. Motive. And whether the act was isolated or part of something larger. Within seconds, Secret Service personnel secured the area and moved to contain the situation. Their rapid reaction highlights just how layered the security perimeter around the White House really is. Multiple rings of protection exist precisely for moments like this, where a potential threat has to be stopped long before it gets anywhere near the resident itself. The system worked the way it was designed to work. Sorry, got distracted again. Shiny keys. Still, the image of a vehicle smashed against security barricades in front of one of the most heavily protected buildings in the world is a reminder of how quickly situations can unfold. The White House is not only a residence, it is a symbol of the presidency and the center of executive power in the United States. Any attempt to breach that space, even if unsuccessful, immediately becomes a major national security event. Authorities are continuing to investigate the driver and determine what led to the crash. In situations like this, officials work carefully to determine whether the act was deliberate, accidental, or connected to broader motivations. Investigators typically examine everything from the driver's background to digital records and communications to rule out larger threats. Moments like this also highlight the constant vigilance required for the men and women responsible for protecting national leadership. While much of the public focuses is often on foreign conflicts or political battles, security teams in Washington operate under the assumption that threats can appear anywhere and at any time. Their job is to ensure that even when incidents occur, the protective system absorbs the impact before real dangers can reach its targets. Events like that remind us that national security operates on multiple fronts at the same time. Military conflicts overseas, political battles in Washington, and economical pressures that hit American every time they fill up their gas tanks. While the kinetic war rages in the Persian Gulf, a secondary battle is being fought at every gas station in America. The conflict with Iran has sent crude oil north of $100 a barrel for the first time in years. But the response from the White House is a complete 180-degree turn from the begging for oil strategy of the past. President Trump has just moved to finalize the Ratepayer Protection Pledge and accelerated the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which is opening up 15,000 unleased blocks in the Gulf of America for immediate drilling. The strategy here is to break the back of the energy spike by signaling to the markets that the U.S. is not just an oil producer, but the world's energy superpower. While critics point to the current national average hitting $3.60, the administration is making a massive bet on the long-term stability. By streamlining permits and forcing tech giants to fund the power infrastructure for the data centers, the goal is to decouple the American consumer from the volatile of the Middle East war zone. This is about more than just a temporary price dip. It's about a total shift in energy policy. The administration is moving to modernize the grid and keep coal and nuclear plants online that were slated for the scrap heap. They are treating energy at the bedrock of national security. The message to Tehran and the rest of the world is that the U.S. is drilling its way out of the crisis, ensuring that even as we dismantle the Iranian regime's naval threats, we are simultaneously building an energy fortress at home that is immune to their blackmail. Energy security is one pillar of national strength. Border security is another. And the number we're about to look at should make every American stop and think about just how large this issue has become. The Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, just released a report that puts a definitive staggering number on the border crisis. And it is the number that should stop every American in their track. We are now looking at an illegal alien population of approximately 19 million people currently living in the United States. That is not a typo. That is a population larger than the state of New York. And it represents a massive, unchecked surge that has taken place while our nation leaders were busy looking the other way. Think about the sheer logistics of that number. We're talking about a 28% increase in just 4 years. When you have 19 million people operating outside the legal system, you aren't just looking at a policy disagreement, you're looking at a fundamental breakdown of the rule of law. This influx infects everything from housing costs to the strain on our emergency rooms and the integrity of our social safety nets. You cannot bring in the equivalent of a major metropolitan area every few years and expect your infrastructure to hold. This fair report also highlights the shadow programs that fueled this growth. It isn't just people jumping the fence. It's the massive expansion of parole programs and the broad application of temporary protective status that allowed millions to settle here without a single vote from Congress. It was a deliberate strategy to bypass our immigration law and create a new normal on the ground. They wanted the numbers to reach a point of no return where mass deportation would seem like an impossible task. But here's the kicker. The Census Bureau itself had to change its methodology because their previous models couldn't even keep up with the scale of the migration. They were missing millions of people in their net migration estimates because the surge was so fast and so vast. When the government's own record keepers admit they've lost count, you know the situation has moved beyond crisis into total systematic failure. At the end of the day, 19 million is a head count on a country within a country. It is a direct result of a catch and release doctrine that told the world the front door was open and the locks were broken. We have to face the reality that our national sovereignty is being dismantled 1 million at a time. Unless we return to a policy of actual enforcement and border integrity, that 19 million is going to be the floor, not the ceiling. And when institutions struggle to resolve major policy disputes, those battles eventually land in court. And right now, one of the biggest constitutional fights in America is heading straight to the Supreme Court. There is a major shift happening in the legal landscape surrounding the Second Amendment. And it's being driven by the very people trying to dismantle it. For years, blue state legislators have been passing increasingly aggressive bans on assault weapons and standard capacity magazines, betting that the Supreme Court would simply look the other way. But according to a constitutional expert like Jonathan Turley, the era of strategic avoidance by the High Court is coming to an abrupt end. The overreach has become so blatant that SCOTUS may no longer have a choice but to step in and set a national standard. Just this week, the D.C. Court of Appeal struck down the district's ban on magazines holding more than 10 rounds, ruling that these are arms in common use and that there is zero historical tradition of banning them. This is a massive victory, and it's a direct application of the Buren standard. When you have lower courts finally starting to hold the line, it creates a circuit split that forces the Supreme Court's hand. Justice Thomas and Justice Kavanaugh have both signaled that they are ready to address the AR-15 issue soon. And the current wave of bans in place like Virginia and Illinois is providing the perfect test case. The irony here is that pushing the envelope so far, trying to ban the most popular rifle in America, and even attempting to regulate how you store them in your home, Democrats have actually accelerated their own legal defeat. They've moved past regulation and brought into abolishment. And that is a line the current court seems to unwilling to let them cross. We're looking at a potential landmark ruling in the next term or two that could effectively nullify assault weapon bans nationwide, returning the focus to the actual text of the Constitution rather than the whims of state legislators. This is a critical moment for every gun owners. We are seeing the death throw of the incremental approach to gun control. The anti-gun lobby realized they were losing the long game, so they sprinted toward total bans, and in doing so, they tripped the constitutional wire. The Supreme Court is the last line of defense, and for the first time in a generation, the momentum is entirely on the side of the Second Amendment. Do you think SCOTUS will finally put an end to these state-level bans once and for all? I want to see your predictions in the chat. Hit the like button if you're ready to see the Second Amendment treated as a first-class right again. And the Constitution doesn't just protect individual rights. It also protects the integrity of our elections. And that brings us to something Chuck Schumer recently said that raised a lot of eyebrows in Washington. Sorry, I had to stretch a little bit. We've all suspected it, but rarely do you get the high definition confirmation caught on camera. Chuck Schumer was recently recorded giving up the ghost on why the Democrats are so vehemently opposed to the Save America Act. He didn't lean on the usual talking points about voter suppression or accessibility. Instead, he admitted the quiet part out loud. He hates the bill because it forces states to clean their voter rolls. Think about the implication of that admission in any other area of life, whether it's banking, medical records, or your own digital subscription. Cleaning the rolls is considered basic maintenance and security. It's how you prevent fraud and assure the system actually functions for the people who are supposed to be in it. But in the world of DC politics, maintaining a clean, accurate list of eligible voters is somehow viewed as a threat. Why? Because a messy system is a vulnerable system. And it seems there are people in power who find that vulnerability very useful. This goes beyond just the hot mic moment. It exposes the fundamental divide in how we view election integrity. On one side wants a transparent, audited, and verified process where only legal citizens can cast a single vote. On the other side, apparently views the removal of deceased individuals or people who have moved out of state as a political attack. If you're a citizen who just wants to know that your vote isn't being diluted by a bloated, outdated list, Schumer's comments should be a massive wake-up call. The Save America Act is a straightforward piece of legislation. It's about ensuring that only Americans are voting in American elections. There's no common sense reasons to oppose it, unless your goal is to maintain the level of chaos in the system. Schumer essentially admitted that the Democrat strategy relies on the very loophole this act is designed to close. When the gatekeepers of our election tell you they don't want the gates locked, you have to start asking, what are they planning to let in? All right, we're getting close to the end. There's so much I didn't get to go. I'm trying to pick out one more before. This is a short one, so I might be able to bang two out before the end. If you thought CNN was bad, look at what ABC News is doing right now. We have an active terror investigation into a man who rammed an explosive-laden truck into a Michigan synagogue, and ABC's headline isn't about 140 children whose lives were at risk. It's a justification. ABC is out here posting on X that the suspect lost several members of his own family in Lebanon and effectively provided a root cause for a man trying to blow up a preschool. Since when did we start using a killer's family history as a headline for their atrocities? This isn't journalism. It's an attempt to humanize a monster while the smoke is still rising from the crime scene. They are prioritizing the feelings of the attackers over the safety of the Jewish community. But it gets worse. While they are busy empathizing with the terrorists, they are running article about Iran's resolve, despite the fact the U.S. and Israel have pounded Tehran's military into the dirt. ABC is quoting observers who say Iran is demonstrating resolve and adapting tactics. Let's apply some common sense. Sinking mine ships and targeting civilians isn't resolve. It's desperation. ABC is trying to frame a dying regime as a gritty underdog, while the same regime ideology is just sent a man with a rifle into a synagogue in West Bloomfield. This is a coordinated effort to flip the script, to make the aggressor look like victims, and the victims look like the problem. And the common sense lesson of the day out of Washington State is a simple one. If you tax something, you get less of it. Just hours after the Democrat-controlled legislature pushed through aggressive new wealth tax, the former CEO of Starbucks, one of the most iconic figures in Seattle's corporate history, officially packed his bags and fled to Florida. Now, we've been told time and time again that these higher taxes on the rich, they won't move. They won't move. We've seen the exodus going on in New York. We've seen the exodus going on in California. And now we're seeing it in Washington State. But apply some common sense to the math here. These wealthy taxes are always sold to the public as making the rich pay their fair share. But they fail to account for the fact that the rich have the most mobility. When you try to put a lien on the success of the people who provide the capital and the jobs, they don't just sit there and take it. They move. And when they move, they take their tax revenue, their investments, and their influences with them. Washington State just traded a massive chunk of its tax base for a headline, and now the remaining taxpayers are going to be left holding the bill. And that's where the landscape stands tonight. From terror attacks here at home in Michigan and Virginia, to the sacrifices made during Operation Epic Freedom, to the U.S. naval forces confronting threats in the Persian Gulf, and the common thread running through all of these stories is accountability and national security. At the same time, Americans are watching debate over election integrity, energy independence, border enforcement, and constitutional rights unfold in Washington and across the states. The American people are paying attention more closely than ever. They're watching how the border is managed. They're watching how service members are honored and supported. They're watching how courts interpret the Constitution and whether elected officials are willing to defend the principle they campaigned on. The political fight we're seeing, from voter rolls debates to tax policies pushing businesses out of certain states, are not random headlines. They are the results of years of policy decisions colliding with the real world consequences people are now experiencing. But here's the good news. You are paying attention. And when the citizen starts paying attention, the nonsense starts to die. That's why independent media matters. Conversations that challenge the curated narrative matters, because the truth doesn't survive in silence. It survives when people like you are willing to speak up and stand your ground. Before we head out tonight, a couple quick reminders on where to find more of SHR Media family. You have BZ, Berserk, Bobcat Saloon would, of course, BZ, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Edge of Liberty with Sackhead Sean every Monday and Wednesday, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Beer and Bullstein with Lyle Armstrong's Friday and Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Mission Ready Men with Big E Jackson, Tuesdays and Thursdays, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And, of course, you have me, Reaver Common Sense, Jersey Joe, every Monday and Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you enjoyed tonight's show, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share the stream. Every single click helps independent media grow and help punch through the algorithm that tries to bury voices like ours. And if you want to support the show directly, you can become a YouTube member by hitting the join button below or dropping a super chat. Your support helps keep the lights on here at SHR Media and keeps this microphone live. Don't forget to grab your gear at shrmedia.com, because sometimes the best way to spread common sense is to wear it. Thank you for spending part of your evening with us. I'm Jersey Joe, and this has been the Reaver of Common Sense. And as always, where truth lives and the nonsense dies screaming. Good night, everybody.